Dave Kells here for another episode of the Independent CPA Firm Podcast, your source to thrive in today's market. Today, we're coming to you live from the poolside cabana at the AICPA Engage Conference. Today, I have a special guest with me, Paul Weinberg. Paul, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Great.
Thanks. Why don't you, for our audience here, just get a little background on yourself and your firm?
Sure. I became majored in accounting in college. I worked a little bit in Chicago in the commodity business in accounting. And in 1984, I decided that public accounting would be a good route for me to be in control of my own destiny and work for myself, which I wanted to do. So I worked for a couple public accounting firms. And then in 1986, I started my firm, and I started it with basically a credit card and a marketing idea to market for personal tax services, because I thought that would be easier to get than business tax. And it proved successful. And I had a tax practice a couple of years after that. And that was 40 years ago. So a lot's happened from then until now.
But that's great. Great story. So tell me, any specialties, any niches, any...
Well, it started out as a tax firm. In 1999, I actually became a chartered accountant in Canada. And we kind of, I was doing some international, not necessarily a lot of Canadian returns, but the ability for expats coming into the U.S., we did that. And just fast forward to today, we have still a high-end tax practice. We have a big accounting, big relatively accounting practice. We do some CFO services. We do public company support, where we'll help the audit, we'll help management write footnotes and do stuff like that. And then we have a political practice that my partner in DC handles, and we do Federal Election Commission reporting. So we're 10 people now. We're a fully remote firm. It works great. We have a great staff, and we're in a good place.
Great. So roots in Chicago, but you cover the
roots in Chicago, but I moved to... I had the opportunity to service some private equity clients in Vegas about in 2011, 2012. And there was one big one that was going to pay us a fat monthly fee. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to move my practice there. And I went back and forth from Chicago to Vegas, which I still do.
Okay.
So
great. So listen, we're here to talk about, and I believe help other independent firms, right? You've had a journey. You're obviously successful in what you do. What's different today than, say, 20 years ago for that independent firm? And what would you offer as advice to others that are going down this path?
Well, I mean, 20 years ago, I think you could almost say 5 years ago. I mean, it's right. I mean, we've gone through such seismic changes. And I think when I started my practice, I had to be responsive to the client, not like this 24-hour, we'll get back to you in 24 hours, more like 24 seconds.
Yeah.
And I think that separates us from a lot of firms. I think one of the differences today that we see is these firms are run with like this corporate bent, and the client doesn't want that. They want a CPA, but the whole trusted advisor thing means being there for them.
Yeah.
And, I think that's a big change. Obviously, technology, everything's in the clouds.
Sure.
When I started, we were using the green paper. And if we were like off a dime on a trial balance, that wasn't that long ago. It would be like, I remember staying 2 hours late to find 25 cents. So the trial balance. And that's obviously a humongous change.
Sure.
And then non-CPAs in the business is a huge change. I think I heard the Big Four hires way more non-CPAs now. I don't even think it's close. So there's a lot of different changes. But as far as being independent, we're happy with it right now.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's refreshing. It's needed. But I think one thing that hasn't changed, and you just touched on it, is client service. Pick up the phone when they call, but add value everywhere you can. And give me your thoughts. We touched on technology a little bit. Technology allows you to be more efficient, so you could have more touch points with a client, add more value on your, consulting, advisory type work. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I agree with what you're saying about getting too corporate. The independent firms know what's at the basis. The firms that are equity backed maybe lose sight of that a little bit.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. We were, throughout this conference, and just a little bit more of a background. is that I started a company about 20 years ago called the CPA Exchange. And what that company was very successful in like 08, 09, and 10. And what we did is we would find clients. At that point, audit firms were separating from, there was a big delineation from what an audit firm could do and what they couldn't do, to the point where like, should we even do the tax return?
Right.
So we knew that there was going to be a market for companies that needed two CPA firms, and that proved successful. And it kind of segued me. I've always been interested in the business side of public accounting, as well as running my own practice. And I think that kind of segued me into, private equity a little bit and learning about that. And I was at the PE conference and that type of stuff. So
I'm sure you're like every other firm. Your phone rings off the hook and your email inbox gets flooded with solicitations from...
Yeah, I mean, not so much, not as much anymore, but yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of people out there that don't know a lot about the public accounting business. I would agree with that maybe I just have ignored these emails and calls for so long that it's like, okay, we don't want to do it, but,
So talk about that a little bit more. The independent firm has a place, I believe, absolutely. Do you feel any pressure, competition-wise, to do things differently today than you did before?
I think it's self-inflicted pressure. I have already, I'm counting that, in a small firm, Dave, it's like September 15th, everything goes, and let's just look at the tax practice, because that's what I run. Everything goes on extension March 15th and April 15th. So we're getting close to a situation where we have 100 partnership returns due and 100 corporate returns coming up.
Sure.
And that becomes a lot. So I think that's where the pressure is. And that's what I like about being independent, because I can impart my values on the staff.
Right.
Where an owner that came in because they love recurring revenues, it's, what I think about private equity and public accounting, it has its place. I think, the big one that was done, the huge one, the first one that we all know, that seems to make more sense than my staff doesn't want to be owned by private equity or for private equity. So I don't know. I think the pressure would almost be more that than it is now in this little firm that we have, because we're really focused on trying to produce a high quality work, have work-life balance, which now these younger kids, it's like completely different than our generation. I got to tell you, totally different.
Sure. Well, that's another topic. Where do you sit on the spectrum of in the office every day versus...
Well, I'm in the office every day. I always have been. And it's like, I still put in, I don't work as much as I used to during non-tax season, but tax season is still big. But we don't, I tell my staff, do not work on weekends. If you want to work on, after April 15th, if you want to, go ahead, but you don't have to.
Right.
But I'm in the office. So I feel like when I'm there, I get stuff done. When I'm not there, even business development, the stuff I should.
For your staff, you offer a level of flexibility.
Totally, because they're remote.
Yeah.
And I think that it's flexible. I can't tell anyone not to go to the refrigerator. You know what I mean? It's completely different managing this type of firm.
Right. And in today's environment, you've had to adapt to that. And
totally.
it is a change, but it is a workable situation.
Totally.
Yeah. I'm trying to, have you impart some of your wisdom to other small firms.
I'll tell you what a big part is AI. We do all our tax research on AI. So you have to put in you can't just put in a general, because you don't know where AI then will extract the information.
Right.
But if you put in a pointed question, like if you were to walk down the hallway 30 years ago to your partner and say, you know what, I don't know if this, if I'm doing this 5471 correctly.
Right. You
can put that into AI, the exact question, though, even if it's 50 words, and you'll get back an answer in 1 second. That's unbelievable.
Right.
It's changed our business.
And now what about, so let's expand on that a little bit. There's a governance fear about personal client information out in the public domain. Obviously, not to do that, but what kind of guardrails do you have for your staff?
Well, it's interesting. We password protect every file that goes to a client. And for a while we were emailing clients. told us they're split. They want to use a portal. They don't want to use the portal. Clients, you're not going to believe this, but clients have told us, stop password protecting my data. So I'm like, well, the only way we're going to do that is if it goes on a portal. It's very difficult to, unless we're in a rush for something. But I'll tell you, one of the biggest constraints is the IRS. It's just horrible. And there was a presentation yesterday. It was great. And I actually talked to them. We have a situation where we filed an S-Corp election that got filed timely, digital signatures rejected by the IRS. And the signatures were certified.
Right.
The shareholders are 3,000 miles apart from each other. There's absolutely no way. What are we going to do? Start FedExing the form around the country?
Right.
So it's putting a hamper on practicing tax.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's better. I don't know. Maybe it's better for billing. I don't want to, I don't want to waste my time though.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we live in a world where bad actors are literally attacking personal information.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We've been, we haven't really had identity theft of any of our clients. We do, we are very careful. But taxpayers a lot of times don't give us their IP PIN, and that comes with, I don't know if you know what that is, but it's an identity protection number assigned by the IRS, and they get it, the client will get it like in July.
Yeah.
So what are the chances that we're going to get it?
Right.
So a lot of times their returns will bounce and we have to go get more information from them.
Sure. Yeah. So, let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned AI. I mean, any kind of products, any functionality AI other than the ChatGPT type stuff?
We do. We have, the accounting department uses some type of I probably should know more about this than I do. They use some type of autofill that's all based on AI.
Gotcha.
To produce these financial statements in lightning speed. So we're trying, we're a younger firm except for me. And my partner is, she's 16 years younger than me. And then the fall off goes to people in their 30s.
Right.
So they think I'm a dinosaur, which I maybe I can't argue with them, but yeah.
So great little segue there. Succession planning. It's been a topic for 30 years, obviously, but I think the PE consolidation craze is coming now because the baby boomer is finally sort of retiring.
Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts? What is your...
Well, I think that I'd like to sell it to the employees, and I think that they might be interested, but that's where the phone rings and, I get calls from, I'm
just going to sorry to interrupt you there. You're in control of that conversation.
Correct.
You know what I mean? You decide which direction you want that ESOP, whichever way you want to go, internal succession. Or outside capital. We just want to make sure our listeners know that you are in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and just because I am adamant about staying independent now, that doesn't mean that I wouldn't sell or transition or whatever word you want to use for a succession plan.
Right.
But I have to have buy-in from the staff. I'm not going to sell it to someone who's we think isn't going to maintain, our values, of integrity and high quality work. Sure. And we don't want someone coming in who just wants to buy it for the recurring revenues and then dump it in 3 years and not really care about the staff. That we don't want to do.
Yeah. And you're doing it the right way. I heard you say you're educating yourself. You went to the PE summit. I encourage firms to do the same. Obviously, well, that's what we do.
I would tell practitioners, and I've been coming to these for literally since the mid-90s. We were talking this morning about how it was the practitioner symposium, and then they added tech, and I think they were a little, they had some trepidation in adding tech, like how are people going to view this? And now look at this conference now.
Sure.
So I would encourage CPAs to take a look at these conferences. Yeah. The AICPA does a great job with this.
And not just for the CPE credits, it's for education
meeting
about what's
people
going on.
And meeting people. I'm going to bring, hopefully next year, a bunch of staff here.
That's great.
Sounds
great. So I don't want to take too much more of your time, but talk about educating the staff. You have... outside of the compliance training and stuff, I mean, what kind of stuff are you doing?
Well, we hired a guy last year who's a tax guy, but he's also really good in accounting.
Okay.
And I'm on a Zoom with him because we're a fully remote firm. 2 to 3 hours a day. I call it tax practice, and we sit there and we review every return. And tax is a different animal than accounting. I'm not really on the accounting side.
Right.
Tax is so detailed. It takes a long time to do these returns and to teach staff how to finish the returns. And then there's a whole tax admin part, getting the return to the client. We disclose our tax positions to the client when we deliver the return.
Right.
And then when we get the signed e-file authorization back, we feel that that's, corroboration by the client that they agree with our position. So that's the type of stuff I try to build in. I've worked years on that, and that's what I'm trying to impart on the staff.
That's great. That's great. As we wrap up, do you have any other, words of wisdom for the growing independent firm about how to navigate this environment?
Yeah, I would say stick with your culture. And, there's a lot of people that are, it always used to be that this is an interesting profession. The reason is there's no doctor. There are very few doctors and lawyers that aren't doctors and lawyers. But there's a ton of CPAs who don't work in public accounting. And I think the stigma was, we don't want to work those type of hours. We don't want to be. So I think that firms, especially with all this consolidation, as they're getting bigger and bigger, that they need to have some type of, it's like work-life balance is such an overused word, but everyone wants to have a life. People want to have families. They want to play golf. They want to do the theater. They want to do what they want to do. So I would say create a culture around empowering your employees.
Strong message. Thanks for that.
No problem.
Well, thanks, Paul, and thanks to our listeners for listening to the Independent CPA Firm podcast. If you found today's episode enlightening, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.